Thousands of police officers go to work every day to keep us safe. But what happens when they face deadly danger? In this video, we'll see the scary stories of officers who never made it back home. From the streets of New York to small towns in the Midwest, these tales will send chills down your spine. Get ready for 1 hour of the most disturbing police officer deaths of all time, where bravery meets tragedy. In March 2022, Eastland County, Texas was ravaged by catastrophic wildfires that tore through the region, leaving a trail of destruction. These relentless blazes consumed dozens of structures, including cherished homes, vital businesses, and community buildings, displacing families and disrupting lives. Entire communities were forced to evacuate, fleeing the encroaching infernos that transformed their landscapes into scenes of devastation. The fires left a lasting impact on the region, underscoring the resilience and strength of those affected. Amid this crisis, Deputy Sergeant Barbara Fenley of the Eastland County Sheriff's Office was one of many law enforcement officers who bravely stepped up to assist with traffic control and evacuations, ensuring that residents could leave the danger zone safely and that emergency vehicles could access the affected areas. As multiple fire agencies battled the fire, Barbara set out to check on an older adult stuck in one of the affected areas. However, she never returned home to her family or called them to inform them of her whereabouts. Her family began to worry when she did not answer their phone calls and failed to show up. When they contacted dispatch, they were informed that her current location was unknown, although dispatch confirmed her last known destination. After the fire had been calmed down enough for a rescue search to be initiated, it was discovered that Barbara had been going door to door in the area, which was in the path of the wildfires. She had been attempting to notify other citizens to leave the area due to the encroaching flames and thick smoke. However, as she drove along a farm-to-market road near FM 2526, the visibility became dangerously low due to the thick smoke. At some point, she could no longer see the road ahead clearly. While navigating through the poor visibility, Barbara inadvertently drove off the road and into the wildfire, engulfing her car in flames. Her burnt body was later found in the vehicle by the rescue team and then taken to the morgue. Her family was also informed of the devastating loss. In honor of Barbara, the state governor ordered flags to be lowered to half-staff. He also appreciated her for her service, saying she gave her life in the service of others and loved her community. Meanwhile, tributes poured in from her loved ones and colleagues, with many remarking that she was passionate about her job and deeply loved helping people. Barbara was 51 years old at the time of her death. She began her law enforcement career in 2003 as a patrol officer for the city of Gorman, where she grew up. In January 2007, she was appointed Gorman's chief of police, a position she held until 2013. Afterward, she became a deputy for the Eastland County Sheriff's Office, working diligently as an officer in the courthouse until the tragic incident. During her memorial service at Myrtle Wilkes Community Center in Cisco, an estimated 1,500 to 2,000 people came to pay their last respects. Law enforcement officers around the state made up a significant portion of the crowd, reflecting how highly her colleagues regarded her. Since then, discussions have been raised about designating a section of FM 2526 in Eastland County as the Sergeant Barbara Fenley Memorial Highway to commemorate her sacrifice. Barbara was survived by her husband, 3 children, and 2 grandchildren. On December 12, 2022, what began as a routine missing person report in New South Wales escalated into a harrowing tragedy in Queensland, Australia. The event, now infamously known as the Wiambilla shooting, claimed the lives of 2 dedicated police officers, Constable Matthew Arnold and Constable Rachel McCrow, along with a courageous civilian, Alan Dare. This tragic incident has left a lasting impact on the community and underscored the inherent dangers faced by those who serve to protect. The chain of events began with the disappearance of Nathaniel Train, a former principal at 2 schools in New South Wales. He was last heard from on October 9th, raising concerns for his well-being from his family members. The situation then became even more complex when Nathaniel's estranged wife, who reported him missing, revealed that she had been receiving threats from his brother, Gareth Train. Gareth resided in Queensland, which meant the New South Wales police officers had no jurisdiction there. Consequently, they contacted their Queensland counterparts to conduct a welfare check on him and his wife Stacey regarding Nathaniel's whereabouts. They also instructed them to follow up on a warrant related to a December 2021 incident involving illegal weapon disposal and a potential border violation. However, the seemingly routine welfare check escalated into a deadly confrontation when Constable Matthew and Constable Rachel arrived with two other constables at the location. Upon arrival, they discovered the entrance to the property was locked and no one was in sight. They jumped the fence and approached the main residence to see if anyone was home. Seconds after they reached the residence, they were ambushed by a hail of bullets fired by the occupants within. During the surprise attack, Matthew and Rachel were hit multiple times. One of the other officers, also wounded, escaped to raise the alarm, while the last officer quickly hid in the nearby bush. After the barrage of shots, the assailants emerged from their hiding spots. They were no other than Gareth, Stacy, and Nathaniel, who had been missing. The evil trio approached Matthew and Rachel, where they lay injured, and then fired additional bullets into them in an execution style to ensure they were dead. They subsequently removed the Glock pistols on Matthew and Rachel and began searching for the officer hiding in the bush. Unable to locate the hidden officer, the assailants set the bush on fire to force him out. At this moment, Alan Dare, a neighbor of Gareth and Nathaniel, approached to investigate the fire. Tragically, his concern sealed his fate. Upon seeing him, the killers ruthlessly shot him, ending his life without hesitation. The officer who managed to escape returned with multiple specialist police officers, leading to a 6-hour siege at the residence. In the end, Nathaniel, Gareth, and Stacy were all killed, while the officer who had been hiding in the bush was rescued. Subsequent investigation into the incident established that the shooting was a religiously motivated terrorist attack targeting police. It was concluded that Nathaniel, Gareth, and Stacy acted as an autonomous cell subscribing to a broad Christian fundamentalist belief system known as premillennialism. In honor of the fallen officers, the police union decided to buy the rural property where they were killed to serve as a memorial site. Additionally, the incident prompted the proposal of a national firearms register to help keep Australia's first responders and community safer. At 5:57 p.m. on May 5, 2024, the Utah Highway Patrol received a worrying call from a concerned traffic participant. The caller claimed a person was standing on the back of a semi-trailer. Sergeant Bill Hooser, 50, was stationed at an I-15 median in Santa Quin, Utah, when he noticed a white truck matching the description given by the caller. Bill Hooser was a police officer who truly loved his job. He started as a volunteer before joining the Santa Quin City Police Department in 2017. Bill was also recently promoted from corporal to sergeant in February 2024. He loved serving the community he called home and helping people in need. Bill followed the truck off the freeway. The 911 call from the concerned driver had made it seem like someone needed assistance, but the truck driver ran a stop sign and even attempted to enter the freeway again. That's when Sergeant Bill Hooser managed to pull the car over, assisted by Utah Highway Patrol Trooper Dustin Griffiths. The two police officers approached the truck to speak with the driver and determine the issue. The driver, Michael Aaron Jane, was initially uncooperative and refused to answer their questions. The officers assured him they were there to help and that he wasn't in trouble. This reassurance eventually led Jane to hand over the truck's digital log to Dustin Griffiths. But as the trooper was checking the document, something strange happened. A woman jumped out of the passenger door. She was obviously in distress. She sprinted to the back of the trailer and around the other side. Her hands were up. What the officers didn't know was that Michael Aaron Jane had essentially kidnapped the woman hours earlier. Initially, she had been voluntarily riding with him, but an argument erupted when they stopped at a truck stop in Beaver, Utah. Jane decided to abandon her and drove off without her, only to return several times, pleading for her to come back. When she refused, Jane became enraged, threatening her with a knife and bear spray, coercing her to re-enter the vehicle. As soon as the woman jumped out of the truck, Sergeant Bill Hooser started walking back to the semi-truck, gesturing to Trooper Dustin Griffiths that they needed to get Jane out of the vehicle and detain him. But Michael Jane had entirely different plans. The trucker locked the door and drove off. Bill and Dustin started running to their cars, their backs now to the truck. Bill Hooser didn't see it coming until the very last minute. He didn't see Jane making a sharp U-turn, coming straight at him until the last moment. Bill tried in vain to move away from his car door jamb, out of the path of the speeding truck. But there was no time. The truck's grill and bumper smashed Bill's body into one of the patrol cars. Sergeant Bill Hooser was killed instantly. But Michael Jayne didn't plan to stop. Instead, he gunned the truck toward Trooper Dustin Griffiths and the woman, and he would have hit them too were it not for the woman. She saw the car coming and warned Dustin. They both jumped and ran from the path of the oncoming vehicle. Jayne fled the scene, then pulled over and ran off the freeway. He managed to evade police for a while, stealing multiple vehicles, but officers caught up near Vernal, where they performed a maneuver that stopped him. Jayne went off the road and crashed. He sustained severe injuries and was transported to the hospital. Michael Jayne faces charges of aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, and attempted kidnapping. 38-year-old Dennis Eric Guerra came from a family dedicated to law enforcement. His father was a retired New York City Police Department officer, and his mother was a retired school safety agent. Naturally, Dennis chose to follow in their footsteps. He began his career at the NYPD as a school safety agent, before becoming a Rikers Island North Infirmary correctional officer. 2006, Dennis returned to the New York Police Department to serve as an officer. Over the next 8 years, he made more than 70 arrests in the line of duty. However, on April 6, 2014, Dennis tragically lost his life due to an event sparked by the impulsive actions of a teenager. On the afternoon of that day, Dennis and his partner, Rose Rodriguez, were dispatched to a New York City Housing Authority building in the Coney Island section of Brooklyn after concerned individuals called the authorities about a possible fire outbreak. Upon arriving, they discovered the fire was on the 13th floor of the building. Rather than taking the stairs, the duo decided to use the elevator, thinking it would get them there faster. Unfortunately, this seemingly wise decision turned out to be a critical mistake. As Dennis and Rose stepped off the elevator onto the 13th floor, they were immediately overcome by heavy smoke and carbon monoxide fumes. Had they taken the stairs, they would have encountered the smoke gradually and recognized the danger before moving further. Despite Dennis and Rose calling for assistance, it was already too late from the moment they stepped off the elevator. The smoke and fumes disoriented them and made breathing increasingly difficult. When members of the New York City Fire Department arrived, they found Dennis and Rose unconscious and unresponsive. CPR was immediately performed on both detectives to renew them before their transfer to a local hospital. Both were in critical condition upon arrival, with Dennis in particular going into cardiac arrest 4 times. Unfortunately, 3 days later, he succumbed to the injuries he had sustained during the fire, even though he was transferred to a more specialized hospital for treatment. Meanwhile, Rose ultimately survived, but sustained lifelong respiratory injuries. Following the incident, investigations uncovered that 16-year-old Marcel Dockery was responsible for igniting the fire. He confessed to setting a mattress ablaze in the hallway out of boredom while awaiting his cousins to open their apartment door on the 13th floor. Those same investigations revealed that Marcel had a troubling history of fires. At age 13, he was involved in an incident where he created a makeshift blowtorch using a lighter and a can of hairspray in the school cafeteria. Photos from the scene of his bedroom showed scorched walls and piles of used matches. Initially, federal prosecutors charged Marcel with first-degree assault for setting the fire. After Dennis died, a second-degree murder charge was added to his case. Despite being offered a plea deal of 22 years in jail, Marcel chose to go to trial. Ultimately, the trial concluded with a verdict of 19 years to life, with an additional 2 years added for an unrelated robbery charge. The sentencing was received positively by those who had shown up every day for the 2-week trial. At Dennis's funeral, he was posthumously promoted to first-grade detective and awarded the Medal of Honor the following year. In tribute to his bravery, a street in New York City was renamed in his honor. It was February 2, 2023. Julian Becerra, a Colorado officer with the Fountain Police Department, was on duty when he and multiple other officers were asked to assist the Department of Corrections in tracking down 3 carjacking suspects: 31-year-old Devin Bobian, 37-year-old Anthony Vallejos, and 28-year-old Denisha Pacheco. At 35 years old, Julian Becerra was a U.S. Air Force veteran who'd served with the Fountain Police Department for 4.5 years. Julian was assigned to the Patrol Division as a K-9 officer. He was experienced, having previously served with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, first as a security technician and then as a deputy sheriff. Not only was Julian a brave and dedicated police officer, but he was also a proud father of 2. He had a son and a daughter. On February 2nd, Julian responded to the call. What followed was a movie-like car chase. Around 5:30 p.m. that day, several officers spotted the stolen car, a Hyundai out of Pueblo, Colorado, near North Academy Boulevard and Platte Avenue. They identified the suspects, Bobian, Vallejos, and Pacheco, and pursued them. It was clear the three suspects were reckless. They were driving erratically, often driving the wrong way down lanes. It was a dangerous situation, and the suspects, especially Devin Bobian, were harmful. Bobian was a 4-time convicted felon and an escapee. 2 months before, Bobian escaped from a community correction site in Pueblo. At some point during the chase, the suspects stopped at Love's Travel Center in Fountain. The three exited the stolen Hyundai and approached a silver Toyota 4Runner in the parking lot. They intended to steal the Toyota and have police lose their trail. One of the suspects approached the car's owner, a woman just about to pump gas. He had a gun. He pointed the muzzle at the woman, demanding her keys and asking her to empty her pockets. Meanwhile, the other two entered her vehicle, waiting for their partner to get the keys. But the woman refused to give over her keys. Instead, she started to walk away. She then turned around and told them to get out of her car. The police were getting closer. When they arrived at Love's Travel Center, the suspects ran back into the Hyundai they had entered and sped away. Just before 8 p.m., though, the Fountain Police Department utilized a tactical vehicle intervention technique to stop the suspects, pinning the vehicle between two police cars. One of the police cars belonged to Julian Becerra. They were on a bridge near South Academy Boulevard and South Hartford Street in Colorado Springs. Julian exited the car, ready to arrest the suspects, but stuck between his vehicle and the bridge guardrail. At the same time, Devin Bobian exited his car. He had to escape. He climbed on the roof of the stolen Hyundai and then leaped on the hood of Julian's car. With Julian Becerra stuck between the car and the guardrail, Bobian should have grabbed the chance and started running away from the police. Instead, the man stopped and turned his attention to Julian. He turned toward the officer standing over him and leaned forward threateningly. Bobian pointed toward Julian, a terrifying gesture that caused Julian Becerra to fall over the guardrail, plummeting 40 feet from the bridge. That's when Bobian attempted to flee by foot, but he was detained shortly after. He fought a lot, and while being handcuffed, Bobian managed to crawl toward the edge of the bridge. He was stopped before he could jump and taken into custody. Julian Becerra was airlifted to the hospital. He was put on life support on Friday, February 10th, but ultimately succumbed to his multiple injuries and died the next day, 9 days after the incident. Devin Bobian was found guilty in Julian Becerra's death and was charged with second-degree murder, vehicular eluding, motor vehicle theft, weapon possession by a previous offender, and 2 counts of aggravated robbery for his actions in the February 2nd car chase. It was December 15, 2023, in Elgeyo Marakwet County, Kenya. Corporal Mushot Boma was stationed at the Mbobut police post. He had been working tirelessly with his colleagues to protect young girls from the illegal and brutal practice of female genital mutilation, or FGM. The day had been long, but their mission was clear: rescue the girls who had been subjected to this inhumane procedure and ensure their safety. The struggle against FGM in Kenya has been an uphill battle. Despite being outlawed, the practice continues, especially in remote regions where cultural traditions hold strong. Women, often with limited medical knowledge, perform these procedures using crude methods and tools, causing severe physical and psychological harm to the girls. For Boma and his team, rescuing these girls was not just a duty, it was a moral cause. That afternoon, Boma and his colleagues had managed to rescue 6 girls who had been recently mutilated. They were taken to the I-10 County Referral Hospital for immediate medical attention. The police team had hoped that their intervention would signal a firm stance against this illegal practice. Little did they know their actions had stirred a dangerous hornet's nest. As the evening approached, an angry mob of young men from the nearby Marin VTC Center began to gather. These youths were determined to protect what they believed was their cultural right. They were incensed by the police intervention and felt their traditions were under attack. Armed with stones and sticks, they made their way towards the Mbobut police post, where the rescued girls were temporarily sheltered. Boma was alone at the post, unaware of the impending danger. The mob arrived swiftly and forcefully. They stormed the police post, their numbers overwhelming Boma. He fought with all his efforts, but the odds were against him. The assailants stoned him mercilessly, and in a final act of brutality, they set his body on fire using a mattress from the station. The mob then fled, taking Boma's G3 rifle with 40 rounds of ammunition with them. The news of Boma's death spread quickly. County Police Commander Peter Mulinge confirmed the tragic incident, expressing deep sorrow over the loss of a dedicated officer. Boma's body was taken to a local mortuary for an autopsy. The attack sent shockwaves through the community and beyond. Activists, local leaders, and international organizations condemned the heinous act, viewing it as a severe setback in the fight against FGM. Tony Mwibia, founder and executive director of the Men End FGM Foundation, was particularly vocal. "It is shocking and disheartening that in the 21st century, we can kill a police officer rescuing girls undergoing the inhumane act," he said. Mwebia's organization focuses on rallying men and boys against FGM and child marriages. He questioned whether the attackers understood the harm caused by FGM, which they defended so violently. The attack on Boma highlighted the extreme measures some communities are willing to take to preserve their traditions. A local administrator who requested anonymity for fear of reprisals expressed concern that such attacks would embolden those performing FGM. "Killing a police officer in the name of FGM worries me," he said. He emphasized the need for comprehensive public sensitization to accompany legal enforcement. In response to the attack, additional police officers were deployed to El Gallo Mariquet to conduct a major operation aimed at curbing the rising cases of FGM. The objective was twofold: track down and arrest those responsible for Boma's murder and address the widespread practice of FGM in the area. The operation faced significant challenges, as the perpetrators were often protected by local bandits willing to confront law enforcement. The operation was not just about punitive measures, it was also about sending a clear message that the government would not tolerate the continued practice of FGM. Commander Mulinge declared, "We cannot allow this to continue because this is outlawed. We are carrying out an operation to flush out the circumcisers and the bandits." Despite the tragic loss of Corporal Boma, the fight against FGM in Kenya continues. The incident has underscored the dangers faced by those working to eradicate this harmful practice, as well as the need for comprehensive strategies that include legal enforcement, community education, and cultural engagement. Metro Nashville Police Department officer Eric Mumaw loved the night shift. The 44-year-old was an 18-year veteran of the force, but this didn't prevent him from volunteering to take the night shift whenever he could. February 2, 2017 was no different. Eric was on duty when the Emergency Communications Center received a call at 4:16 a.m. The call came from a family member of a woman named Julie Glisson. According to this person, 40-year-old Julie was in her car, on the boat ramp at the edge of the Cumberland River, threatening to end her own life. Julie had a history of self-harm attempts. This time around, her relative was worried Julie was going to succeed. They needed someone to go and prevent her from taking her own life. Eric Mumaw responded to the call. Officers Nick Diamond and Trent Craig joined him. Together, the three men rushed to the scene. In cases like these, every second matters. Eric Mumaw was no stranger to helping people in even dire situations. Throughout his career, he helped everyone from abducted babies to victims of violent attacks, or even people experiencing homelessness. He was the kind of person who always went the extra mile, and his efforts didn't go unnoticed. In 2003, Eric received the department's Exemplary Service Award. He was decorated again in 2011 when he received the department's Life-Saving Award. The police officers quickly arrived at the scene. They saw the car parked at the bottom of the Peeler Park Greenway trailhead boat ramp at the edge of the Cumberland River, a significant waterway. Its waters are deep. Given the time of year, they were also bound to be icy and unforgiving. The three men split up. Officer Nick Diamond approached the car from the passenger side, while officers Eric Mumaw and Trent Craig came from the driver's side. 40-year-old Julie Glisson was sitting behind the wheel. They started talking to the woman, trying to get her to reconsider and leave the car. The situation was tense because the officer knew Julie could put the car into gear any time. They talked for about 10 minutes. Officer Trent Craig slowly reached in, trying to prevent Julie from putting the car into gear. Meanwhile, Eric Mumaw attempted to open the door because it seemed that Julie would get out of the car after all. That's when the car started moving, heading toward the icy waters of the Cumberland River. It all happened in a flash. As Eric Mumaw and Nick Diamond tried to grab the car, both men lost their balance. The vehicle started submerging, dragging the two men with it. The car and the ensuing powerful current pulled them further into the river. The water was indeed icy. It was mayhem. After a while, though, Nick Diamond somewhat regained control. He saw Eric struggling to stay above the water and drifting further into the river. Nick reached for Eric, but his grip wasn't firm enough. He lost it, and Eric drifted away. Meanwhile, Officer Trent Craig saw Eric getting carried away by the river. Trent ran along the riverbank. Then he spotted the top of Eric's head. Trent wasted no second, plunged into the cold water which came up to his neck. He tried to swim and reach Eric, but the cold and the extreme conditions overcame his body. Trent knew he had to escape the river to survive, so he did. Nick Diamond and Trent Craig called for help. Julie Glisson had managed to get out of the water sometime before. Eric Mumaw's body was recovered by a rescue dive team some 5 hours after he was swept away at 9 a.m. that morning. He was found less than 100 yards away from the boat ramp. Julie Glisson was charged with vehicular homicide by intoxication and pleaded guilty. She was sentenced to serve 12 years and barred from driving for 10 years. Eric Mumaw was not married and had no children. Family, friends, and colleagues mourned him, and hundreds of officers traveled from multiple states to attend his memorial. On August 24, 2023, Sergeant Graham Saville was at work. Graham, who began his policing career with the Metropolitan Police in 2013, joined Nottinghamshire Police in 2017. He was based at Newark Police Station and recently became a response sergeant. Graham, who was 46 years old and a father of 2, loved his job. His wanting to make a difference was what led him to become a police officer in the first place. To those who knew him, family and colleagues alike, Graham was the epitome of what a police officer should be. He was empathetic, kind, funny, and compassionate. His peers greatly respected him because he loved helping and developing younger officers. He was the one who always ensured the team was coping with some of the more challenging incidents. That Thursday, just before 7 p.m., the Nottinghamshire Police received a call from a residential area in Balderton, one of the largest villages in Nottinghamshire, England. The call was made over concerns for a man's safety. Sergeant Graham Saville responded to the call. When he arrived at the scene, Graham noticed a man in distress. The man, who appeared younger than Graham, was on the railway line near Newark Northgate Station. He needed help, and being on the railway line made the situation even more stressful. Any approaching train was bound to become a problem, but Graham Saville was a dutiful police officer. He was also selfless and brave, ready to face any danger to save another person. Graham approached the man and tried to help him, but his attempt was cut short when he was struck by a train. People watched the highly traumatic incident in horror. Graham Saville was taken to the hospital, having suffered severe injuries. The other man, who was 29 years old, was also taken to the hospital with electricity-induced injuries, which were deemed non-life-threatening. Between the two of them, Graham was by far in a graver condition. 5 days after the incident, he succumbed to his injuries and died at Queen's Medical Center, surrounded by his family and loved ones. Graham's death was described as a selfless sacrifice. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called his ultimate sacrifice a testament to his bravery. For over a decade since joining the Waterloo Regional Police Service in 1989, Constable David Rodney Nicholson has exemplified dedication and service to the community. Throughout his career, he became a vital member of the Emergency Response Unit. He excelled as a police diver with the Underwater Search and Recovery Unit, showcasing his commitment to public safety and specialized operations. He was expected to locate and retrieve bodies, evidence, vehicles, and other objects, such as weapons, from underwater environments and conduct underwater rescues in cases of drowning or accidents. On the evening of August 12, 1998, the Underwater Search and Recovery Unit received a call to rescue 10-year-old Mark Gage, who had disappeared under the water at the Park Hill Dam. Mark had been swimming at the dam with his friend when he suddenly vanished. After over 30 minutes passed without any sign of Mark resurfacing, his friends, concerned that he might have drowned or that his life was in grave danger, quickly reported the incident to authorities. Dave and fellow constables Rob Sove and Curtis Rutt were dispatched to the location to help. Upon their arrival, Dave donned his diving gear, including a scuba tank, and then jumped in to begin the search. He started around the last place Mark was seen, then extended his search to other parts of the dam. When he began searching among the jutting wall abutments of the dam, he was sucked inside the sluice due to the dangerous underwater currents and eddies created by the abutments. It was believed that he found Mark here, with the prevailing theory being that the boy had also been pulled into the sluice. Despite his wealth of experience, Dave couldn't attempt to swim out of the sluice, as he discovered that his scuba tank got wedged in a hole when he was sucked in. To save himself and possibly the kid, he sent a distress signal through his lifeline to Rob and Curtis, who were waiting above. Following standard protocol, the duo attempted to haul Dave back up using the lifeline. However, the current proved too powerful. Even when over 50 bystanders and responders tried to help, they could still not overcome the water's fierce grip. Dave's lifeline was cut during the process, ending the possibility of being hauled out by his rope. At the time, there remained hope that Dave could still be rescued. Sove, one of his partners, bravely entered the dam to assess the situation and provide a new lifeline to Dave. Unfortunately, Sove was also drawn into the sluice, but unlike Dave, Sove freed himself and resurfaced while gaining crucial insights into Dave's predicament. He made 2 further attempts to dislodge Dave from where he was stuck, but regrettably, both efforts were unsuccessful. In another desperate bid to save Dave, Rut, his third partner, plunged into the water with a scuba tank secured to a long pole. However, as Rut neared Dave, the powerful current ripped the tank from the pole, swallowing it whole. Undeterred, Rut surfaced, retrieved a guide rope, and with a Herculean effort, managed to secure it near Dave. Yet another devastating twist of fate unfolded. When Rut and others tried to pull the line up, it became clear that Dave's regulator hose was snagged. This fatal entanglement severed his air supply, leaving him unable to breathe underwater. Within minutes, Dave succumbed to drowning. Dave's tragic death marked the first officer fatality in the 25-year history of the Waterloo Regional Police Service. His body, along with that of Mark, was discovered 3 days later, with Dave cradling the young boy in his arms. Since his passing, Dave's unwavering dedication and selfless heroism have been fondly remembered. In 2017, Eric Mumaw, an 18-year veteran of the Nashville Metro Police Department, responded to an urgent dispatch from the Metro Emergency Communications Center. The call concerned Julie Glisson, a distressed woman in crisis, located at the Peeler Park boat ramp near the Cumberland River. This scenario set the stage for a tense and potentially life-threatening situation, showcasing the bravery and dedication required of officers in the face of such emergencies. As expected, Eric and his colleague, Officer Nick Diamond, rushed to the location to save Julie before she could commit the act of taking her own life. Upon their arrival, they found her in the driver's seat of a car positioned precariously at the edge of the boat ramp with her foot on the brake. They immediately attempted to persuade her to leave the car and come with them. After a few minutes of back and forth, the driver's door opened, and they believed they had convinced Julie not to continue with her plan to end her life. However, at that moment, the car slipped out of the park and rolled into the water, as Julie shockingly decided to put the car into gear. The suddenness of the act caught Eric and Nick off guard, preventing them from reacting quickly enough. They both lost their footing and were pulled into the water by the car's weight as it sank. While Nick and Julie managed to swim back to shore quickly, Eric was carried further into the river, struggling against the cold water and challenging conditions. A third officer, Trent Craig, who witnessed the incident unfold, quickly ran along the riverbank for a short distance and jumped into the water to save Eric. However, he soon realized that the water was at neck level and frigid, with a strong current making it impossible to swim toward Eric. Faced with the danger to his own life, he was forced to make the difficult decision to get out of the water while Eric continued to drift further away. Minutes after Eric was no longer in sight, the Nashville Fire Department officers arrived and dispatched boats to search the river for him. Helicopters were also deployed to assist in the search efforts. Several hours later, a diver located Eric's body approximately 70 yards from the boat dock, confirming that he had drowned. Meanwhile, Officer Nick and Julie were rushed to a nearby medical center for treatment during the search for Eric. Both did not sustain any life-threatening injury during the incident. Within days, Nick was released, but Julie was booked in the county jail and placed under investigation. Ultimately, Julie was charged with aggravated vehicular homicide by intoxication alongside other charges. She pleaded guilty to the aggravated vehicular homicide charge and was subsequently handed a maximum penalty of 12 years in prison. Other charges were dropped while she was stripped of her driving license for 10 years. While Eric was alive, he was known for performing several heroic acts, including saving a baby inside a car that was hijacked from its father and rescuing an individual who was being attacked by a roommate wielding a sword. Over time, his actions earned him the department's Exemplary Service and Life-Saving Awards. Despite not being obligated to be on the night shift since he was a more senior officer, Eric would regularly volunteer for the change to help his colleagues. Meanwhile, in his community, he often went out of his way to help the people he served in his community. This was seen by his frequent bringing of donuts to local emergency service workers and hot meals for homeless people. Eric's untimely death was met with profound sorrow, leaving a community in mourning. Known for his dedication and kindness, Eric was honored with heartfelt tributes from colleagues and friends alike. A memorial service drew law enforcement officers and first responders from across the state, all gathered to pay their respects. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Valor, the Metro Nashville Police Department's highest honor. 3 years later, his legacy was permanently etched into the heart of his community with the unveiling of a commemorative plaque at Peeler Park, a lasting tribute to his service and sacrifice. Lieutenant Colonel Arnaud Beltrame, at 45, had dedicated over 2 decades of his life to the French military. His unwavering commitment and exceptional service saw him rise through the ranks, earning the prestigious Cross of Military Valor, among other honors. His career was marked by bravery and a profound sense of duty, making him a celebrated figure in the military. In August 2017, he assumed the role of Deputy Commander at the Carcassonne Departmental Gendarmerie Unit. Situated in a tranquil medieval town rarely troubled by major incidents, it appeared Arnaud sought to peacefully wind down his career after years of being in the thick of the action. However, less than a year after he joined the unit, life took a different turn for him. On March 23, 2018, Arnaud encountered the terrorist Redouane Lakhdim, who was linked to the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. That morning, Lakhdim had hijacked a car from an unsuspecting driver who was going about his daily activities. During the process, he injured the driver, killed the passenger in the car, and then dumped the body in the bush. But that wasn't all. Lakhdim also shot at a group of policemen who were out jogging, injuring one of them as he thought they were onto him. After hijacking the car, Lakhdim drove a short distance to the small town of Trebes to carry out his sinister plan. Armed with a handgun, a hunting knife, and 3 homemade bombs, he stormed into the Super U supermarket, shouting, "I am a soldier of Daesh," a moniker for the Islamic State. Within moments, he killed 2 more people, including a customer and a store worker, before taking the remaining people in the supermarket as hostages. Arnaud and a couple of other police officers were the first to arrive at the scene after concerned individuals reported the ongoing incident. They made contact with Lakhdim, who demanded that authorities release Salah Abdeslam, the only living suspect and alleged mastermind of the 2015 terror attacks in Paris that left 130 dead. During the standoff, Arnaud and his colleagues were able to negotiate the release of the hostages, except one. Lakhdim had held back the person left behind as a human shield while he waited for his primary demand to be met. Disturbed by the woman's fear for her life, Arnaud decided to take action. He had trained for such moments in the past and believed it was best to swap himself with the woman. He then volunteered to be exchanged for her, not thinking about the fact that he was risking his own life. As the exchange occurred, Arnaud left his mobile phone on a table inside the supermarket, keeping the line open for police outside to monitor the situation. The standoff remained tense for several hours, but after 3 hours passed and Lakhdim realized his demand might not be met, he stabbed and shot Arnaud. This prompted the police tactical unit to wait outside to storm the supermarket, resulting in Lakhdim being shot and killed. Despite sustaining severe injuries, Arnaud was still alive when rushed to Carcassonne Hospital nearby. However, in the early hours of the following day, he succumbed to his injuries. Autopsy reports later revealed that Arnaud had suffered 4 gunshot wounds from Lakhdim, but it was the stab wounds to the throat that proved fatal. Following the incident, claimed responsibility in a statement via its Amaq news agency, stating in Arabic that a soldier of the Islamic State carried out the attack in response to calls to target the coalition countries. Investigations later revealed that Lakhdim had been on an extremist watch list due to his radicalization and connections with the Salafist movement, a hardline branch of Sunni Islam. However, he was not monitored closely at earlier points as he had not indicated imminent action. Arnaud's act of bravery earned him tributes from around the world. French President Emmanuel Macron described him as demonstrating exceptional courage and sacrifice, and that he died a hero by giving his life. The late colonel was also posthumously awarded the Legion of Honor, and many cities announced plans to name streets, squares, or buildings in his honor. Just after 11 p.m. on August 15, 2019, police constables Andrew Harper and Andrew Shaw finished their shifts when Thames Valley Police received a 999 call. Harper and Shaw were actually on their way home. They didn't have to respond, but they decided to do it anyway. The call came from a property in Berkshire, UK. A burglary was underway. A group was trying to steal a 10,000-pound quad bike. The two police constables started driving to the location, hoping to stop the thieves and return the quad bike to its rightful owner. At 28 years old, Andrew Harper was a respected police constable. He was kind and selfless, doing everything in his power to help. Harper was newly married to the love of his life, Lissy, and was looking forward to their honeymoon in the Maldives later that month. He had no idea that responding to this call would forever change his and Lissy's lives. At about 11:28 p.m. that night, police constables Andrew Harper and Andrew Shaw came across a Seat Toledo vehicle driving towards them on Admore Lane, a narrow street. They noticed straight away that the car was towing a quad bike. They also saw that one of the suspects was outside the vehicle, trying to unhitch the motorcycle, most likely because they wanted to ditch the Honda TRX 500 quad bike and quickly exit. It is possible that Harper and Shaw were surprised to see that the suspects were teenagers, but these weren't typical teenagers. They were thieves who had meticulously planned this burglary. Hours before, 19-year-old Henry Long and 18-year-olds Jesse Cole and Albert Bowers turned off their car's rear lights and taped over the number plate. They then drove to the quad bike's location, masked and armed with an axe and crowbars, ready to take out anyone in their way. But the quad bike owner saw the three teenagers taking it and roping its handlebars to the back of their vehicle. He was the one to make the call that police constables Andrew Harper and Andrew Shaw answered. Harper and Shaw now encountered the teenage suspects. They saw 18-year-old Cole unhitching the bike. Andrew Harper quickly got out of the police car and ran to the suspect's vehicle, trying to stop them from getting away. But Cole saw him and quickly dived through a passenger window. The rope they'd used to tow the quad bike was still attached to their car. In a cruel twist of fate, unwittingly, Andrew Harper stepped with both feet into the trailing tow strap, becoming essentially lassos to the suspect's vehicle. 19-year-old Henry Long, the trio's leader, was also the designated driver for this nefarious endeavor. He long sped off, driving at up to 60 miles per hour. Andrew Harper was trapped, swinging like a pendulum behind the speeding car. He was most likely rendered unconscious as soon as he hit the road, thus becoming unable to free himself from the rope. In the meantime, Andrew Shaw rushed to help Harper, but eventually lost sight of the suspect's car. But he did find Harper's stab vest in the road. After about a mile of being dragged behind the car at breakneck speed, Andrew Harper was disentangled from the moving vehicle. Some other colleagues found him on the road. His police uniform had been ripped and stripped from his body by the high-speed journey. Harper was dead, having suffered horrific injuries. His death came as a shock to his friends, family, and colleagues. But the shock only became more incredible when the three teenagers were eventually apprehended and brought to trial. Long, Cole, and Bowers were seen laughing and joking at the trial. Bowers even fell asleep as the prosecutor showed footage of Harper's demise. The prosecutor tried to show that the three suspects had intended to kill Andrew Harper by speeding off instead of stopping the vehicle. The jury, however, acquitted all three defendants of murder, but found them guilty of manslaughter. In the wake of Andrew's tragic demise, his wife, Lissy Harper, campaigned vigorously for Harper's Law. This law mandates life sentences for anyone convicted of the manslaughter of an on-duty emergency worker. Enacted in 2022, the law did not impact the sentences of Long, Cole, and Bowers. On January 9, 2023, Jose Luis Sonko Quispe, a 29-year-old police officer, was patrolling the streets of Juliaca, Peru. The night was dark and tense. The region of Puno had been a hotbed of unrest following the ouster of President Pedro Castillo, and the atmosphere was charged with anger and frustration. Sonko, alongside his partner, Ronald Villasante Toc, was on duty, trying to maintain order in a city on the brink of chaos. Juliaca, a city near the Bolivian border and Lake Titicaca, had seen escalating violence over the past month. Demonstrations had turned deadly as supporters of the former president clashed with police forces. The death toll from these confrontations had risen steadily, reaching 47 by the day of the tragic incident. The unrest had begun in early December, following the arrest and impeachment of Pedro Castillo. Castillo had attempted to dissolve Congress in a last-ditch effort to avoid impeachment, a move that was widely condemned and ultimately unsuccessful. His arrest triggered widespread protests, particularly in rural areas where he had strong support. Castillo's successor, Dina Boluarte, had tried to calm the situation by pushing for early elections and supporting investigations into police actions. However, these measures did little to pacify the enraged populace. On the night of January 9th, Sonko and Villasante were patrolling an area known for its intense protests. The city was in turmoil, with demonstrators demanding immediate elections and expressing their loyalty to Castillo. The protests had taken a particularly violent turn, with clashes between civilians and police resulting in numerous fatalities. As the two officers drove through the streets, they were suddenly ambushed by a large mob of around 350 protesters. The attack was swift and brutal. The mob surrounded their patrol car, shouting and throwing objects. Within moments, the situation spiraled out of control. The protesters dragged the officers from the vehicle and began to beat them mercilessly. Ronald Villasante Toque, Sonko's partner, later described the scene as a savage attack. He was beaten severely, sustaining multiple head injuries. In the chaos, he lost sight of Sonko and was unaware of his partner's fate. Villasante was eventually taken to a hospital in Lima, where he recounted the horrific events to authorities. Meanwhile, the mob's fury turned even more deadly. After assaulting the officers, the protesters set fire to the patrol car. José Luis Sonko Quispe, unable to escape, was burned alive in the vehicle. His charred remains were found by the police, who arrived at the scene later. Prime Minister Alberto Otarola confirmed Sonko's death during a session of Congress. He expressed his condolences and condemned the violent actions of the protesters. Otarola also announced a 3-day curfew in Puno, from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., and declared a day of mourning for the fallen officer. The death of Officer Sonko was a grim addition to the mounting toll of violence in Peru. Since the protest began in early December, 39 civilians had been killed in clashes with police, 7 had died in related traffic accidents, and now a police officer had lost his life in a particularly horrific manner. The previous day, January 8th, had seen the killing of 17 people in Juliaca, further escalating the violence and unrest in the region. As the news of Sonko's death spread, it became a symbol of the escalating violence and the deepening crisis in Peru. His tragic end highlighted the dangers faced by law enforcement officers in such volatile situations, as well as the intense anger and desperation driving the protests. In the days following the attack, the government tried to restore order in Juliaca and other affected areas. The curfew imposed in Puno was part of these efforts, aimed at preventing further violence and giving the authorities a chance to regroup. However, the deep-rooted issues fueling the unrest remained unresolved, and the country continued to teeter on the edge of widespread chaos. The brutal killing of José Luis Sonko Quispe left many questions unanswered. How had the situation escalated to such a deadly point? What could have been done to prevent this tragedy? In the end, the story of José Luis Sonko Quispe is a tragic example of the dangers faced by those on the front lines of civil unrest. It is a sobering reminder of the need for thoughtful, compassionate solutions to deep-seated social and political problems. It was about 1:35 p.m. on June 4, 2021, when Worcester police officer Emmanuel Manny Familia responded to a distress call at Green Hill Park. The call reported a person struggling in the pond. Manny, 38 years old and a 5-year veteran of the Worcester Police Department, arrived at the scene with 4 other officers. The day was clear and the pond seemed calm. Manny was born in La Vega, Dominican Republic, and moved to Worcester as a young boy. He grew up in the city, attending Doherty Memorial High School and later Quinsigamond Community College. His journey eventually led him to pursue a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Anna Maria College. Manny joined the Worcester Police Department in 2016 after serving as an officer at Clark University, Quinsigamond Community College, and in the small town of Oakham. At Green Hill Park, the situation was dire. Troy Love, a 14-year-old boy from Virginia, was visiting Worcester with his family. Troy was enjoying a summer day at the park when he decided to swim in the pond. Suddenly, he found himself struggling in the water. Panic set in as he waved his arm, desperately signaling for help. Manny and his fellow officers did not hesitate. They rushed into the pond, their training kicking in as they swam towards the struggling boy. In the chaos, they managed to pull 2 individuals out of the water, but Troy was still out there, and so was Manny. As the officers regrouped on the shore, they realized Manny was missing. The atmosphere grew tense as the search for their colleague began. Divers arrived and combed the murky depths of the pond. At 2:28 p.m., they found Manny. An hour later, they located Troy. Both were rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Manny and Troy were pronounced dead. The news of Manny's death shocked the Worcester community. Worcester Police Chief Stephen Sargent called Manny a hero, praising his selfless devotion to the city and his ultimate sacrifice. "The city of Worcester has lost a hero," Sargent said during a press conference. "We will remember and honor his selfless devotion to Worcester and his ultimate sacrifice to save someone he didn't know." Manny's death left a profound impact on his family, friends, and colleagues. He was known for his dedication and passion for his job. He was a member of the department's Tactical Patrol Force, the Crisis Intervention Team, and was training to join the SWAT team. Manny was also active in the community, playing on the department's basketball team and representing them at charitable events. His older brother, Elvin Familia, delivered a heartfelt eulogy at the funeral, describing Manny as the life of the family. Elvin shared memories that brought laughter and tears to those gathered at St. John's Catholic Church. He spoke about Manny's ability to grow a full beard, something Elvin joked he was still working on. But amidst the humor, there was a deep sense of loss and pride. "God called your dad up for a special detail up in heaven that only he can fill," Elvin said to Manny's children, 17-year-old Jayla and 13-year-old Jovan. "Manny left us with an incredible responsibility to look over you, and that's exactly what we'll do." The community rallied around the Familia family. Worcester's new minor league baseball stadium displayed a video feed of the dual-language Mass for those who couldn't fit inside the church. Outside, hundreds of officers lined the streets as Manny's body was brought to the church in a horse-drawn carriage. The burial followed the Mass, marking the end of a solemn day of mourning and remembrance. Manny's younger brother, Eric Familia, described him as a big brother like no other. The bond between the siblings was evident, and the loss felt by the Familia family was profound. Eric's words echoed the sentiments of many who knew Manny, a man who loved deeply and served his community with dedication. The Worcester community did not forget Troy Love and his family either. The loss of the young boy from Virginia was equally tragic. Troy, who dreamed of joining the military someday, was remembered by his family as a teenager who loved video games and had a bright future ahead of him. The Love family was in Worcester on vacation, a time that was supposed to be filled with joy and relaxation. Instead, it ended in heartbreak. To honor both Manny and Troy, 2 trees were planted at the edge of the pond in Green Hill Park. A memorial bench dedicated to Manny was also unveiled during a private ceremony. On August 2, 2023, just before 6 a.m., 22-year-old Officer Matthew Hare of the Easley Police Department received a call about a person in distress. The call was urgent. Someone was experiencing a mental health crisis on the railroad tracks near the 2000 block of East Main Street in Easley, South Carolina. This was not just a simple cry for help. The person was trying to take their own life and had placed themselves in grave danger. Hare, a rookie officer who had only been sworn in 5 months earlier, did not hesitate. He knew that time was of the essence. Officer Hare and his partner rushed to the scene, knowing that every second could mean the difference between life and death. They began their search for the individual in distress as soon as they arrived. For nearly an hour, the officers combed the area, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The railroad tracks, which normally lay quiet at this hour, felt foreboding under the weight of the urgent mission. Eventually, they found the person, a man clearly in a mental health crisis. He was disoriented and distraught, his intentions clear yet confused. As Officer Hare approached, he spoke calmly and reassuringly. His goal was to save this person's life. The situation was delicate, and any wrong move could escalate the crisis. Hare knew he had to act fast, but also be gentle. With his partner assisting, Hare managed to convince the man to move away from the immediate danger of the tracks. But fate had other plans. Just as they were guiding the man to safety, the distant sound of an oncoming train became audible. The Amtrak Crescent, a passenger train running from New York to New Orleans, was approaching. The urgency intensified. The train's powerful headlight pierced through the early morning mist, a sign of imminent danger. Officer Hare acted on instinct. He focused solely on getting the man off the tracks. As the train neared, its sound grew deafening. In those final moments, Hare managed to push the man out of harm's way. The man was saved, but Hare wasn't as fortunate. The train struck Officer Hare, killing him instantly. He died a hero, having given his life to save another. The aftermath was a scene of both sorrow and respect. Lieutenant Ashley Anderson of the Easley Police Department faced the media later that day, struggling to hold back tears. "It is a tragic day," she said. "Officer Hare died saving the life of someone he did not know. He was a hero." She asked the community to keep Hare's family in their prayers. The tragic news spread quickly through the community. Easley was in mourning. A procession was held later that afternoon to honor Officer Hare's sacrifice. Multiple law enforcement agencies joined in paying their respects. A memorial fund was established for his family, and Hare's patrol car was placed in front of the Easley Police Department, adorned with flowers, pictures, and notes from grieving citizens. The Amtrak Crescent train was delayed for about 7 hours, as the State Law Enforcement Division and the Pickens County Coroner's Office conducted their investigations. No one aboard the train was injured, but the impact on the community was profound. The individual whom Officer Hare saved was taken into custody. Details about whether charges were filed against the man were not disclosed, and his identity remains protected due to the sensitive nature of his mental health crisis. Hare's partner, who had been with him during the rescue, was unharmed but deeply affected by the loss of his colleague and friend. On January 5, 1983, 25-year-old Alistair Anthony was walking his dog along the Blackpool seafront while on vacation. Being a tourist, he was unaware of the sea's powerful waves, which often posed risks even to expert swimmers. During the walk, Alistair's dog had headed recklessly for the sea in pursuit of its ball and quickly began to drown. Confident in his swimming abilities, Alistair immediately jumped in to rescue his dog. While wading along the seawall apron, a wave swept him off his feet. He then managed to swim to a nearby concrete slope, but struggled to find a way out of the water. An anonymous individual who witnessed Alistair struggling in the water called the authorities. Shortly after, Angela Bradley, Gordon Connolly, and 2 other officers were dispatched to the scene to attempt a rescue. They arrived with a promenade life belt, intending to provide it to Alistair so he could use it to return to shore. However, as Angela and Gordon attempted to reach him, they were tragically swept away by the strong current and crashing waves. 3 people were now lost in the water. Still, emergency officers on the scene believed a rescue operation could still be feasible for some of them. At this point, road traffic officer Colin Morrison arrived at the scene and joined the rescue attempt. However, like Angela and Gordon before him, Colin was swept away by the sea, intensified by a strong westerly gale. The conditions were so severe that the lifeboat from neighboring Fleetwood, which had been summoned, took 3 hours to reach the area. Upon arrival, the waves remained too powerful, allowing them to approach only within 68 meters of where the officers had last been spotted. Amid the dire situation, a 4th officer, PC Pat Abram, bravely jumped into the sea to continue the rescue attempt, but quickly found himself in danger of drowning. Fortunately, his colleagues managed to throw a rope around him and pull him to safety, where he received immediate mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. With previous rescue efforts having proved futile, the chief superintendent, who was kept informed of the unfolding events, reluctantly issued an order prohibiting anyone else from entering the water to prevent further loss of life. When the waves finally subsided, Colin's body was recovered by a winchman lowered from a helicopter. Several days later, Angela's body was found on a sandbank at Presall. Alistair's body was discovered at Knot End 9 days after the incident. Gordon was the last to be seen, with his body recovered just days before the end of the month. All 3 cops were honored with a memorial plaque within Jubilee Gardens, Gin Square, Blackpool. It was July 22, 2013, when the Las Vegas Metro Police Department received a distress call from a hiker stranded on a ledge just above Mary Jane Falls at Mount Charleston. The area was off-limits and marked with signs warning hikers to stay out, but this man had ignored the warnings and was now disoriented and unable to move. A wildfire had been burning in the area for weeks, causing park workers to close several trails for public safety. The conditions were dangerous, with smoke and the risk of falling trees making the situation even more perilous. Despite these hazards, the Metro Search and Rescue Team, known for their bravery and expertise, geared up for the mission. Officer David Van Buskirk, a 36-year-old veteran of the force, was part of the rescue team that night. Van Buskirk had been with the department since 1999 and had joined the search and rescue team in 2007. He was known for his skill and dedication, having performed dozens of rescues in similar conditions. He lived in Henderson, Nevada with his wife and was deeply embedded in the Las Vegas community, both professionally and personally. The team located the stranded hiker just over an hour after the call came in. The decision was made to use the helicopter's internal rescue hoist to lift both Van Buskirk and the hiker to safety. As the helicopter hovered above, Van Buskirk was lowered to the ledge where the hiker was waiting. He attached a safety harness to the man and signaled to the helicopter crew to begin the hoist. Suddenly, in a moment that no one could have predicted, Van Buskirk became detached from the hoist line and fell a non-survivable distance into the canyon below. The hiker remained on the cable and was safely lifted into the helicopter. The mood among the officers was somber. The Las Vegas Metro Police Department had not lost an officer in the line of duty since 2009. They wore black bands over their badges in honor of Van Buskirk, mourning the loss of a beloved colleague and friend. Assistant Sheriff Joseph Lombardo expressed the collective grief and determination of the department. "We're a big family, a close family, and this is going to be trying on us for quite a while. We will survive it. We'll come back together, and hopefully in my lifetime, it will never happen again." Clark County Sheriff Doug Gillespie praised Van Buskirk's dedication to his duty, emphasizing the danger that first responders face every day. The rescue community and the wider public reacted with an outpouring of grief and respect. On social media, tributes poured in for Van Buskirk, with many calling him a hero. Nevada Governor Brian Sandoval and U.S. Senator Dean Heller were among those who publicly acknowledged his bravery and sacrifice. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board launched investigations to determine what went wrong. Initial reports showed no abnormalities in the harness, and the exact cause of Van Buskirk's fall remained unclear. The Las Vegas Metro Police Department's air unit came under scrutiny. Some speculated that outdated equipment, specifically the non-locking rescue hook, might have contributed to the accident. Ken Phillips, chief of the National Park Service's Search and Rescue Branch, noted that many progressive rescue units had upgraded to locking hooks to prevent such incidents. The Metro unit had not been aware of the forced rollout phenomenon, a scenario where a slack cable allows the carabiner on a rescuer's harness to roll over the top of the hook, pushing open the spring-loaded gate and causing the carabiner to separate from the hook. This type of equipment failure was common knowledge among many in the rescue industry, but not at Metro. In the aftermath of Van Buskirk's death, Metro replaced all its non-locking hooks with locking hooks, an upgrade that cost around $1,400 each. They also took steps to improve training and equipment standards to prevent future tragedies.